Hi everyone, this is Pam from the Bridgeville Library, and today I'm going to take you through Ancestry.com. So, normally with Ancestry.com, you can only access it for free inside a library. However, up until April 30th, you can access it at home with your library card, and you can get to that from elibrary.einetwork.net, and you can find a link that will take you directly to Ancestry.com. So now is a good time to get started on some of the family history and family searching you wanted to always do. So Ancestry.com is one of the world's largest databases for genealogical research. They have everything from family trees to newspaper articles and lots of other great resources, which we'll get into. So like I mentioned, we can access Ancestry free with our library card from elibrary.einetwork.net, and it's the full Ancestry.com. If you know someone who's interested but don't have a library card, they can sign up for a library card. They can sign up for a library card remotely through the library catalog and get access right away. So when doing genealogical research, there's a lot of different myths out there that people have heard about. For those who do genealogical research, one myth that they may have heard about was the 1890 census burned, and it's completely destroyed, and there's no way we can access any of it. That's not entirely the case. There is some salvageable parts for the 1890 census, and what happened was it did catch fire, and a lot of it was waterlogged, but some parts have been discovered. So, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, is if you're going back through the census trail, don't give up on the 1890 census. There is some information from there. Number 2, the biggest myth, in my opinion, is you can find your entire family history online. As great as Ancestry.com is, not everything is on there, and not everything from local archives and museums and historical societies have been digitized. So sometimes it takes calling a local place, whether that be a cemetery, a historical society, a local archives, a college archives, to look for information. Some of these places also have what they call finding aids online, almost like a guide to different collections. They can help you that way as well, but not everything with your family history can be found online. And number 3, maybe the most popular one, is your ancestor's name was changed at Ellis Island. This is not entirely true, and one reason is because port lists and boat lists were done at the country where people left. So for example, my ancestors left from Poland. Their names were written down when they left Poland, not when they came to America. However, a few reasons why your family's name could be changed. Number 1, literacy rates weren't the best back when our ancestors came over, and so they may not have entirely knew how to spell their name. Number 2, the person writing it down may have written it down wrong. Number 3, when it got transcribed from one person to another list, it may have been written down wrong, or some people may have changed it on their own over time as well. So looking at multiple spellings of names is something that we're going to talk about, and it's probably the biggest key to this. Starting your search. The best way to start any kind of genealogical research is to start your search at home. So look around or ask family members or friends, what kind of stuff do you have? This could be birth certificates, journals, diaries, photographs, whatever it may be. And also interview people in the family. For me, genealogical research is great if you can get names and dates, but it's also getting a full family history of your members in your family and learning more about them as a whole, and kind of your whole family history as well. If you're able to find exact birth dates, exact names on things like marriage license or birth certificates that you may have had or family member may have had, look through all those old boxes or old safes lying around, and that will be able to jumpstart your research and help you get on the right track right away. Organizing your search. Now, for people who have done genealogical research before, one of the things they say that's the most frustrating is they feel like they're spinning their wheels. They're doing the same search over and over and over and over again. So here are some tips to get organized. Keep a chart or a log of what you searched and where you've searched. So for example, if you called the Heinz History Center and asked them for a high school yearbook and they didn't have it, write it down. If you called a cemetery to try and get a birth date and it was unsuccessful, write it down. So you, in 6 months to a year, when you pick the research back up, you don't keep calling the same places over and over again. Also, it is incredibly important to write down successful searches and also the spellings of different searches and spellings of the names you've used, and record these successful searches. In my experience, people do genealogical research in spurts. They will do it for a little bit, then they'll put it aside. So keeping a log of everything, and this could just be a pen or paper, this could be a spreadsheet, however organized you want to make it. I recommend keeping track of everything you've searched for so you're not doing the same work over and over again. It is already so much work to do this, so trying to minimize repeating things is always good. Okay, searching tips. Why is searching so difficult? First thing is genealogical records aren't created in a logical way, and over time different records have changed and they have different information, how they're transcribed, how they're preserved. Everything is kind of a mess. But there's so many records out there, it almost makes sense. We're very thankful that all these records exist. Sometimes interpreting them is a little difficult. The other thing is searching can be difficult because there's different spellings and versions of names, especially women's names. So for example, your grandmother, her name might have been Ann Jenkins, but records could have it as Mrs. John Jenkins, Mrs. J.R. Jenkins, her husband's name, Ann Presley Jenkins, her maiden name, and so on and so forth. So for one individual, there are 5, 6, 7 different ways you could search that person's name. So that's why if you search one option, it may not work. The other thing is it could be Ann without an E. It could be Anna. It could be Ann with an E. So there are so many different name variations just of one person's name. That's why if you're able to get a birth certificate, it may be helpful so you can have a more accurate spelling. But if not, if you just knew your grandmother's name was Ann, you have to try and search many different ways. And lastly, searching can be difficult is changing boundaries. This can be true in the United States, but especially abroad and in Europe, country boundaries have changed. So while you think your family may be from Italy, maybe over time the borders of northern Italy have changed, and they may actually be from a different country. When searching for genealogical research and looking for your ancestors, I recommend starting specific and then broadening it out if you need to. One example is using the advanced search feature on Ancestry. With this, you can do exact searches. I don't recommend doing exact. There's a box that says exact, and we just talked about how names could be spelled differently depending on the record. So I wouldn't recommend doing the exact search. Especially for name spellings. I would recommend if you know family members that are tied together, add them. If you have an approximate birth date, approximate birth year, anything like that, add that and see what happens. Wildcards are incredibly important. So like we just talked about with Ann Jenkins, our example, if I was just searching for her and I didn't know if she was Ann, Anna, Ann with an E, and without an E, I would write under first name A-N-N. I would do parentheses, and then I'd put an asterisk or a question mark in that last spot. Now what that does is it will search for everything. It will search for A-N-N. It will search for A-N-N-E. It will search for A-N-N-A or any other variations. This is also really helpful if you're unsure of a birth year, but you think it was 1890 something. You don't know if it was 1 or 2, things along those lines. If you're not sure how her last name was spelled, you could use these things. These will give you a broader search result and maybe help you find what you're looking for. After you find what you're looking for, pull up a search, you can use different categories. Say if you're just looking for military records, you can do that. Or you can use different sliders to filter results. Why searches fail? Searches fail for many, many different reasons. The record isn't online, which we talked about. Maybe it was recorded wrong over time, how it was transcribed onto a new piece of paper, how it became searchable digitally. These are all record errors, transcription errors, and sometimes the record doesn't exist. Maybe it just wasn't there, or maybe over time it never got put online or it got thrown away. There are so many different reasons why our searches fail. Searching names. We hinted about this with our example earlier, but it's really hard if you have someone in your family with a common surname, so a common last name. It's important in these situations to identify as much about their lives as possible, whether that be date of birth, city where they lived, spouse, kid, parent, any type of information you can to help narrow it down. The other thing is called following the census trail. So if you're able to find your ancestor or a ancestor in one of the census, maybe it's the 1930 census, then you can look up that information, use that same information to trace back to the 1920 census, then the 1900 census, and so on and so forth. So almost like working backwards or forward, depending on what census information there is. The census is fascinating, and there's a lot of really good information on there. I highly recommend poking around the census, especially to get started. And then if the person you're looking for has a common surname, maybe see if they married someone with an uncommon name and kind of link them two together. Also, it's really helpful if you're looking for women to look for their maiden name because maybe that can also pull up marriage records, in some cases military pensions, headstones, and church membership. A lot of churches create really detailed records, and those are really helpful as well. So sometimes you may have to call a church, or local colleges sometimes have church records as well. Okay, there are a lot of different records, and these are just a few out there. Census records, which I talked about, and then voting lists as well, which is really, really great. These records contain more than just names and ages, sometimes country of origins. And then, like we said in the beginning, don't specify exact in the search if you're not sure if that's exactly how you spell it or if that's the exact birth year. And then there's also a comprehensive UK census on there as well. Looking at vital records, these contain marriage license, birth and death certificates, divorce, and sometimes they contain more than name and date. They're also done at the city, county, or state level as well. So if you're unable to find and you're looking for specific vital records, you can look online, maybe through that specific county or city's website, or contact someone at the Vital Records office. Military records are some of my favorite, especially enlistment records and pension files. With enlistment records, sometimes it gives physical descriptions of the person, whether it be color of hair, color of eyes, things along those lines. So it creates that full picture of our ancestors as well. There's draft registrations, death and casualty list, pension files, which usually leave information about a next of kin, so that may help you as well. Immigration records. It helps if you know the approximate date or ports that they came in. There's also naturalization records, and sometimes information about passenger lists are available, crew lists, things along those lines as well. And then directories. City directories are really popular. A lot of them aren't online depending on the area which you're looking for. But if someone owned a business, that'd be listed. It's city directories almost predated a phone book. And then there's also the U.S. Public Records Index from 1950 to 1993, which has marketing lists, change of address forms. And then some companies do have professional and organizational records available through Ancestry. And then lastly, other records. There's everything from church histories, records, school lists, yearbooks, all sorts of great stuff out there. In some cases, there's photographs. I was able to find recently a photograph of one of my ancestors through Ancestry, and it was a high school yearbook photo as well. Just a few tips before we leave. Remember, ancestry and genealogical research can be really overwhelming. I am not a genealogist myself. I can help you navigate the database. Feel free to email the library, let me know, leave a comment on our Facebook page, and any type of questions I can help answer that way. And just remember, keep track of what you are searching for, because it can be overwhelming, but making that list and recording every name you searched for, and try multiple spellings. Thank you.